All right, it's time for another update and forecast on the park fire. I would say the quick summary is that I'm not expecting much growth throughout the day today, but we do have some potentially challenging conditions in the weather forecast ahead, including a warm up, which will bring in some drier air over the next couple of days, and then actually the chance for some thunderstorms as we get into Friday and Saturday. So it's kind of a brief summary of what we're going to be talking about. First thing, before we get into the weather forecast, though, is just to try to figure out what's happened on the fire recently. The acreage is up to around 390,000 acres. And if we want to put that into the context of California wildfires, it's number 5 on the list of largest wildfires in recorded history. And if you take out, it's technically number 2 for a single ignition fire. The August Complex, Mendocino Complex, SCU Lightning Complex, there's going to be fires where multiple fires with multiple ignitions then came together. So park fire, in a way, is almost the second largest single fire in California history. And then right there it says 192 structures destroyed, but that's actually, unfortunately, a number that we've seen go up in the last couple of days. It's not that there's been new structures destroyed in the last couple of days, it's just that they're getting the damage assessment teams out there. And we actually saw a huge jump in this. This is now the CAL FIRE website, which has been updated more recently, and that's showing 358 structures destroyed. So again, thoughts and prayers go out to everybody who's been impacted by this wildfire. Just looking at the acreage, the 390,000, got a new map I can show you here where it shows the progression of this fire. And this kind of paints the picture that the majority of this growth was in the first few days and mostly last week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. The purple to green color, that's going to be where it started down in Chico, took off that first day, grew about 45,000 acres overnight. Then we had those strong southerly winds just continuing to push this fire towards the north. But if you look at this map, this is where some of the good news comes in. If the last few days is the yellow, orange, and red color, you notice there's not very much of it showing up on this map. And I finally got my Google Earth working again, and I like that I did get it working because we're able to basically click on and off here to see exactly where that growth was yesterday, see where the largest increase was. Not maybe a little flare up over here on the west, but clearly the northeastern section was the most active. But even there, just look at the northeast right now. That's the smallest amount of growth I think we've seen on this fire. That might even be less than Saturday when we had that cool moist air move in. Now with that being said, one of the areas where we did see growth yesterday is actually one of the spots we were talking about yesterday because we have this big canyon right here. I believe that's Mill Creek. And with that, the big reason the fire activities calmed down the last couple of days, one, it's all of the resources that are now on this fire. Looking at CAL FIRE coming up here. It's now up to 5,800 personnel, 41 helicopters, 500 engines, over 100 crews. So that's a big part of why we haven't seen much fire progression in the last few days. So resources, number 2 is the weather changed. We had that cool moist air move in on Saturday. And then last week, the winds were staying strong even during the overnight hours. This week, the winds have really been calming down overnight, which has allowed them to go direct, really put in some good lines, even do a couple firing operations, as we've seen on this side just to the west of Butte Meadows. So that's where they purposely cleared out the fuels. So then if that fire tries to bump up against 32, well, the fuels have already been cleared out. So it's basically putting Butte Meadows in a much better position. And again, that's a big part of that is because we saw improvements with the weather. And today's, I would say, maybe the last day where we have that good weather out there. It's why I'm not expecting much growth. And I mean, it's 12 o'clock right now. And it looks like the fire is just socked in with smoke. You're not seeing those big plumes coming off of the fire. So, I mean, we might see a little acreage burn throughout the day today, but I'm actually more worried about tomorrow as it gets hotter and drier, and then Friday, Saturday when that thunderstorm chance comes in. But just coming back here, the reason we were expecting some growth right here yesterday is because overall on the fire, winds were decreasing to around 15 miles per hour, which is much less than the 25 to 30 mile per hour winds we had last week. But whenever you have a canyon like this, it can almost be like when you put your thumb over the end of a hose and it makes the water go out faster. In canyons, especially in the afternoons, you can get your winds going a bit faster. You have that topographic influence because the wind is basically being funneled through the canyon like that water at the tip of the hose that you have your thumb over. So we did have some increase there. I could just click it on and off so you can see where that growth was. Probably going to see a bit more there today. One challenge that they've had here is overnight, the smoke settles into this canyon, and then they're not able to get crews in there or even use helicopters because it'd be too dangerous to get crews in there because they can't really see where their fire is, and they can't use helicopters because obviously low visibility due to the smoke. Now, one great thing to see, though, is what's going on in Butte Meadows. That's one of the spots that we were previously very concerned about, but it looks like they've completed that firing operation. So that side of the fire is now tied in to 32. And Butte Meadows, if we look at what a lot of these resources out there have been able to do, I also got a new map right here that actually shows where some of the lines are on the ground. And we'll just start off with Butte Meadows because it's not only that firing operation that's protecting them. If you look at where you see those black X's on the map, that's going to be where they have dozer lines in place. And then where you see the pink X's, that's going to be where they are planning to put some dozer lines in. So Butte Meadows not only has the firing operation between them and the fire, they now have not only one, but it looks like a primary, secondary, maybe some contingency dozer lines as well. And then if we come up to Mineral, so Mineral is another location that we're worried about up here. I guess a useful way to see the structure threat is actually turning the structures on this map right here. Might take a second. And now they're coming up. So Chico, down on the southern portion of this fire, you have Paradise, Magalia. Forest Ranch is looking great. I've actually heard that they've taken some of the evacuation orders and they've downgraded those. I believe they're actually repopulating Forest Ranch at this point. And then right there, that cluster of structures is going to be Butte Meadows. And then up here, that cluster is going to be Mineral. And then the number 3 concern we had the other day was Manton and Shingletown up towards the northern part of this fire. And you know what, I'm actually going to quit out of Google Earth again. I think it's making the live stream go a bit slow. My Google Earth has just been causing some problems recently. But right there, those were the 3 areas we were the most worried about because the predominant wind direction has been from the southwest. That's why when you see those red stars on this map, that's where the fire has been the most active recently. And it's because with southwesterly winds on the western side of the fire, that actually kind of helped to push the fire back into itself. Now, we did have some heat there in previous days. For example, on this northwestern side, we did have the spot fires that crossed Lanes Valley Road. But I listened to the CAL FIRE briefing, and it sounds like they've basically handled the situation up there. They're mopping it up at this point. So zooming out, it looks like the only real recent heat that we've had where you have those red stars is on this eastern side, or northeastern side. But even there hasn't been much growth recently. So just coming back here, going around to show where they have the dozer lines, around Butte Meadows, around Mineral, and not only are they basically just mopping up those spot fires that happened around Inskip Hill, but they've also put in not only primary but now secondary lines that would be protecting Manton and Shingletown. And then they've also put in these dozer lines on the western side of the fire as well. So fire's looking quite good at this point. There's basically no heat recently on the southern edge of this fire. And then even if there was heat, they now have dozer lines between the fire and Paradise and Magalia, for example, as well. So a lot of great work being done there. I think that kind of sums up where the fire has been. Where would my biggest concern be right now? Honestly, I'm not really concerned about anything throughout the day today. I'm always hesitant to say that during wildfire forecasting because anything can happen in California, especially when the fuels are as dry as they are. But looking at the satellite imagery, I mean, it's just socked in with smoke right now. If we look at some of the weather stations on the ground, the red number there is going to be your winds. That's about 5 to 9 mile per hour winds. That's the wind. Maybe there's an 11 way up there, but that's actually north of the fire. Yeah, so winds basically non-existent. You do see some of those temperatures getting up into the low to mid 80s. And when we look at the forecast today, it is going to be slightly warmer, around maybe 89 in parts of the fire. Relative humidity, though, still around 20 to 25%. So that's where we have been pretty close the last couple of days, around 90 with 20 to 25% relative humidity. And as we've seen on our progression map, there's been very little growth the last few days, and that's the best our satellite imagery has looked in a while. Whenever you have that much smoke, it limits the amount of solar radiation that can come in, so then it limits your daytime heating, which means you keep a bit more of your moisture in the air. Your relative humidity doesn't drop as low. It also means that that canyon aspect that I was talking about, your canyon winds won't be as strong either because those often have to do with your daytime heating as well. And it looks like the smoke has just settled into those canyons. And then if we actually look at a video from the ground, there was definitely some smoke coming off of it earlier, but that smoke I think is actually to our benefit now because that smoke has just settled over the fire because the winds are so calm. And then it's, again, limiting the daytime heating, which ends up working in our favor. Now tomorrow, this is where the weather forecast starts to get maybe a bit more concerning. You see the temperatures jump back up into the 90s. More importantly, relative humidity drops down into the teens. And anytime you see relative humidity drop into the teens, that means, it's dry out there. That makes the fuels drier, and then it makes it more likely for fire to spread. But based on the resources that we have on this fire, all of the work that they've been doing the last few days, not really expecting any huge increase in activity either today or tomorrow. I would say the real question mark in the forecast is going to be what happens as we get into Friday and Saturday. So what's been happening the last couple of days, that trough that cooled us down on Saturday has been moving off to the east. What's taking its place is this big high pressure system that's pretty much covering the entire west through this weekend. And you have clockwise spin around a high pressure. So what that's going to do is take some of this moisture from the Gulf of Mexico and bring it up into California. So not only does the high pressure lead to an increase in temperatures, we can see that we're going to go from below average temperatures shown in the blue over California to by really Thursday, Friday, Saturday, it looks like we're back into the above average temperatures. If we need to take one silver lining, at least doesn't look like it's one of those huge heat waves like what we had at the beginning of July. Looks like we're about 5 to 10 degrees above average. I believe in that heat wave we're about 20 to 25 degrees above average in some parts of California. So it's going to get hotter, which means it's going to get drier. We're seeing that already tomorrow. But let's see what the winds do tomorrow. So tonight, winds are going to, that's 1 a.m. Still, winds calm down again tonight. So that's going to really help firefighters out there again go direct. Tomorrow afternoon, it is showing some gusts around 20 to 25. I've noticed in the past few days, though, that this website has been overestimating the winds by about 5 to 10 miles per hour. So it doesn't seem like the winds are actually going to be that gusty tomorrow. I would guess maybe 15 to 20. And it looks like it's from a more southerly direction than it has been recently. Let's see if... it's still showing southwesterly on the National Weather Service and a bit more southerly than what was expected today. So tomorrow, hotter, drier, perhaps slightly windier, but again, wind's not as bad as last week, so I'm not expecting a lot of growth tomorrow. Where that clockwise circulation bringing that moisture up from the Gulf of Mexico is important, though, is it's going to bring in a lot of moisture. So that's what California looks like right now. That brown color basically means dry air. But then watch what happens as we get into Friday and Saturday. You're going to see that moisture get pulled up into California, and then that creates the potential for some thunderstorms. And I haven't actually looked at this yet on this map, so we're going to be seeing this for the first time together, what that's going to look like on Friday in terms of thunderstorm potential. So you see it start to move in. It actually looks like it's more southern Sierra and southern California on Friday. And then let's see if more of that moisture finds its way up into northern California on Saturday. Yeah, so Saturday looks to be the day where we have a bit more of the thunderstorm threat. I will say it looks like it's to the east of the park fire. So, I mean, we're going to follow this very closely because it's still a ways out in the forecast to say confidently what's going to happen with the thunderstorm chances. But I would say what might actually be more of a concern for the park fire than actually having a thunderstorm go over the fire and lead to gusty, erratic winds that can move the fire in all sorts of different directions, can be dangerous for firefighters. But I would say what may actually end up being the larger impact to the park fire is that these thunderstorms end up creating new fires up in the Sierra because we're drying out all week, we're warming up all week. The fuels up there are going to be drying out even more. Thunderstorms come in, they create some lightning, start some new fires, and then all of a sudden we start having to take some of the resources that we have on the park fire and it gets deployed to some other fires that are now starting. So that's, I'd say, one of the main things that I'm going to be watching, especially as we get into Friday and Saturday as those thunderstorm chances come up. But in the time being, I think for today, for sure, tomorrow, perhaps, I'll do another update tomorrow morning, but I think we can, just enjoy this nice, calm wildfire behavior that we have throughout the day today. And then when it comes to those thunderstorms, we'll just cross that bridge when we get to it. But I think we can all kind of take a deep breath for the next 24 hours. And then as things get hotter and drier tomorrow, we'll see what happens. And then as this thunderstorm threat comes in this weekend, we'll follow that live as well. So hopefully this video was helpful. Again, thoughts and prayers to everybody out there who's been impacted by the park fire. I'll have another update, I think tomorrow morning. Not going to need to do one again this afternoon because it looks like the fire's pretty calm right now. So yeah, hope this video helped, and thanks for watching.